Hey everyone, welcome back to the Nello Reads channel. Our first pro-revenge story of the day comes from Football RPG. Car thief gets caught in the act, leaves her phone with tons of incriminating evidence linking her to other crimes, and now the would-be victim owns her Facebook account and is posting everything he finds. In order to avoid breaking the subreddit rules on doxing, I won't name names, but this is something that is going viral in my hometown. You can probably find it with a Google or Facebook search. A week or two ago, someone, let's call him Joe, caught someone, the thief, breaking into his car. The thief got so startled that when they took off, they left their belongings there, including their phone, which had no password on it. Well, because everything goes through your phone now, Joe was able to take over the thief's Facebook account and put them on blast. Joe has been posting all the screenshots of messages he finds, incriminating the thief in a series of crimes, including a potential murder that was disguised as an OD. Joe's posts have helped link the thief to storage unit break-ins, car thefts, catalytic converter theft, home break-ins, including using obituaries to steal from recently deceased people, shoplifting, drugs, and worse. Videos of her breaking into storage units, messages about selling stolen property and drugs. There's even screenshots of search history including how to hotwire a car, easiest car to steal, and so on. This is an ongoing saga, and Reddit rules prevent me from giving too many details or links to the Facebook account, which is a shame because this is absolutely a pro-revenge worthy story. Possibly even nuclear revenge. This has the potential to solve a good chunk of crimes in the area. So that's where the story ends, but obviously I didn't want to leave you hanging, so I googled it like the OP said, and wow, this thing gets crazy. So Joe, when he first found the phone in his car, also found a bunch of pill bottles. He called the number attached to them and found out that the pills belonged to the thief's fiance, who, fresh out of jail, tells Joe to just keep whatever he finds. So Joe starts posting everything to Facebook, it goes sort of viral, and the thief finds out. So she freaks out, steals another car to go visit her fiance. It breaks down, someone calls the police about a suspicious vehicle, and she gets arrested for allegedly having drugs in the car with her. So now she's in custody, and in the background, internet sleuths are digging up more about her as her story gets bigger and bigger. Turns out, just like OP said, they think she might have murdered someone a few weeks before the car robbery, and really none of this would have ever happened if she didn't try and break into this one guy's car. The story is still ongoing. Most of what I just discussed is all allegations as well, but it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. If you want to learn more, I'll leave a link to a pretty massive article about it in the description, but it's a little too dark for my taste, so let's keep going. Our next story comes from Naughty Cat 890. Didn't go above and beyond? I'll delete everything that was above and beyond. The original owner of the business I worked for was amazing. I'll call him Larry. He cared about every employee and realized how much we helped the company with our respective positions. He even let me go negative on my sick time once when I was hospitalized for a week following a double pulmonary embolism with the agreement that I would work the time back. And I did. Just painting a picture of how wonderful Larry was as our boss. Larry finally retired after 45 years of running the business and sold it to his son, who I'll call Eric. Most people know how bad an idea that is, but Larry thought his son could handle it. He couldn't at first, but that's another story. Eric thought I wasn't doing enough during the working hours, so office job, dealing with inventory coming into a retail store, but what he failed to realize was that since I worked up there for 6 years and got familiar with the work, I was really efficient at the job. So much so that I had collected more responsibilities each year. Larry was one of the main people pushing for me to take on more each year, with immediate raises every time something was added. Eric didn't have the same mentality. Eric fired me for, quote, being inactive for too long during the day. And another reason, which isn't important here, also another story for another time. So I was really active for my last 3 days with deleting everything I had created for the company. It was all above and beyond work, so since I didn't ever go above and beyond, they didn't deserve to keep it. It was signs for products, pictures gathered for advertising, vendor contact information, a program I designed to keep organized and on time for invoices, and a manual I had typed up on how to do my job. They had an old version of my job instructions, but by that time they were practically obsolete, especially with all my extra duties collected over the years. In the 2 years I've been gone, they've had at least 8 people hired for my position who quit within a couple months. I keep getting updates every few months from one of my friends in that office. Edit to address some questions and concerns. I did all those extra things off the clock except for some advertising images that were for past promotions and no longer valid. I never had to sign anything saying my intellectual property became theirs. Neither the job description nor handbook had anything about intellectual property either. I've gotta say, 8 people in 2 years is pretty ridiculous. I think at a certain point, the new boss just has to go, okay, I messed up, please come back. But real life isn't always as entertaining and perfect as a Hollywood movie, so I don't see that happening probably ever. The third story comes from As an Atheist Films. Try to stiff me? Get a mechanic's lien. Per ProRevenge rules, I will be using fake names for the story that happened to me about 7 years ago. The job. I was starting my side business doing IT work for businesses in my area, and had some successful work for a few companies. I found word of mouth was the best way to gain new clients, because entrepreneurs tend to network with other business owners. Tony was one such client who had heard I had done some work for a client and called to see if I could help him too. His company's needs were to stop using a semi-accounting service that they had been paying a percentage of their profit to process payments, purchase orders, and billing/receivables. He brought in an accountant to work on a new product, pretty well known. They wanted a server to be accessible remotely and had already paid their ISP for a static IP for the server, but needed the actual server, redundancy UPS, and firewall device. I explained that for the product they had, we could probably set up a workstation and not a server, and it would run approximately $3,500 total and would be easy. But no, the owner wanted a full-blown server system with all the bells and whistles. He explained that he would likely be using the server for a CRM and a few other systems later on. The setup. Overall, the entire cost for the system would be $8,000, not including a few other services that needed annual billing, VPN and remote service. Equipment cost was $7,500, my labor charge was $500, UPS was $1,500, the server was $3,800, and a refurbed firewall with a programming by a third-party specialist was $1,800, and lastly, a spare rack was $400. I got my contract signed, put in an order with my distributor and the firewall specialist, and got to work 1.5 weeks later when the firewall came in. I finished the job on a single weekend, and got everything up and going after a call to the ISP, who did not like the firewall appliance I installed. For some reason, they had to tweak things on their end, and finally allowed the traffic to go through once more. I confirmed it functioned with the owner, who verbally approved and was happy. The a-hole move. I sent my invoice promptly on Monday. They had 1 week to pay. When I saw no reply or payment after 4 days, I messaged Tony and asked if they had received my invoice. To my surprise, he replied the server was not working, and proceeded to call me and tell me that the whole thing was a total waste of money and I should have never done the job. I, of course, apologized and informed him I would be on the way to fix whatever the problem was. When I got there, they refused to let me in to see the server, claiming that they had someone coming over to fix my mistakes. At that point, I informed them that they still needed to pay for the equipment and we could maybe discuss my labor after I figure out what's going on. Tony refused to let me in and was pretty upset. The advice. At this point, I was pretty upset. 2.5 weeks had passed since I ordered my equipment, and my distributor needed to get paid within 45 days. I was getting very nervous and was thinking of taking it to small claims court until talking with a friend who informed me I could pull a mechanic's lien. I informed him that this was for IT, and he stated that the mechanic's lien where I live can actually be pulled on various industries, and IT was one of them. I could actually maybe get my stuff back. So I started the process to fill out and file a mechanic's lien on Tony's company. Much to my surprise, there was no court date I had to attend for it. All I needed to do was provide considerable proof to clerks and later to the constable. The revenge. After filling out the mechanic's lien and serving him notice, I once again gave him the opportunity to pay the $8,000 owed. By this time, I had spoken with my distributor and he switched my account from 45 days to 90. Even so, Tony still refused via phone call and got him on text. I took the information I had and went to the local constables who, after seeing the mechanic's lien and proof, set up an appointment to meet me at the place of business to take back my server, UPS, and firewall. I went in on Tuesday, which I had learned was the day the accountant came in to start the week. The constable and I arrived at 7:30 a.m., right at opening time. At first, they refused entry, until Tony came by and was informed I was enforcing my mechanic's lien and would be taking back my equipment. He immediately got riled up and claimed I could not take the equipment because a new person had replaced it all. The constable asked if I had serial numbers and models for the equipment, which I did. We go in and find my server, UPS, and firewall all in the exact same way I left it. The server showed it had been online for the entire time. No real changes were noticed, and as far as I could tell, no one had worked on it. Tony began to chuckle when I shut the server down and said, "How are you going to take the system when it's bolted to the ground? Bet you didn't think about that, you idiot." He didn't realize that rack-mounted equipment is not permanently attached to the mount. I guess he thought he had beat me because it was all one system that you cannot take apart and not something that was put together. His jaw dropped the moment I removed the server and loaded it onto the cart after removing just a couple bolts. He started panicking and started telling the constable that he would sue him if he didn't stop me. The constable simply stayed calm and ignored the owner. I guess after a bit, he informed Tony that he needed to get out of his face and step back. But when Tony refused to back down, the constable undid his holster safety harness and put his hand on his firearm. Tony's face was exquisite, full of fear and eventually a dawning sensation that this was going to happen one way or another. At first, I did not understand why he was so riled up and now had a panicked face like his world just collapsed until a bit later. I wrapped up my server, UPS, firewall, and left the rack. True to Tony's word, undoing the bolts proved difficult to impossible with the tools I had, so I told Tony he could keep it for the new server he tries to set up. It didn't take more than 2 hours before I got a call from him stating that he had just talked to his attorney and he would be suing me for damages and I would be going to jail for trespassing. I informed him he did not pay for the equipment, his equipment was repoed, thus there was nothing to sue for. As far as trespassing, I was servicing a mechanic's lien with a law enforcement officer. Thus, it's not trespassing. He then starts hemming and hawing about how he needs to bill clients because he hasn't had revenue in a week, but his accountant can't do anything because she has no access to the accounting software and they have no copies. I informed him that it was not my problem and I would not be giving access to the server, nor data contained, and he should have paid me for the equipment instead of trying to screw me over for money. He then offered to pay me if I could install the server back the same day, but only if I did it that same day, otherwise he'd find someone else. I informed him that our original contract was null and void. I would be returning the equipment to my distributor, but first, I had to wipe the storage by DoD standards, which means 0% chance of recovering files unless he somehow had NSA level funds. He starts freaking out and resorts back to what he usually did. Threatens me with a lawsuit, make my life a living hell, etc. So I hang up and text him I'm going to proceed to delete his data that evening and that I was no longer interested in working with him. More advice and the real revenge. He called me at least 50 times. I just silenced my phone and had a talk with my friend later that night. The friend who had originally given me the advice about the mechanic's lien. He asked me why I was returning the equipment if I had the only copy of something that has everything Tony needed. From client names, contacts, phone numbers, billings, receivables, etc. He asked me how much revenue the company generates. I informed him I was taking a wild guess, but it was somewhere in the ballpark of $58,678.21 for the last month. He laughs and tells me, why don't you charge them double the price to get his equipment back and have him pay you cash before you start? He was right. I was taking my petty revenge and walking out with an $1,800 firewall I had to pay for in advance and a $500 unpaid labor charge. Why not take it a step further, get sweeter revenge, and get paid a fat stack of money? The following day, I messaged Tony. I apologized for the way I behaved yesterday and said it was not professional. Unfortunately, your crappy attitude and attempts to screw me over got the better of me. The server has not been wiped yet. I would like to reconsider a new arrangement so we can salvage this sour experience and turn it into sweet honey. Are you interested in working with me to get your equipment back? I must warn you, it will be extra since I would be doing double the work. Let me know. Tony immediately called me and immediately his a-hole ways came back. I knew you would change your mind and come crawling back. Yes, I want everything, but I am only paying $8,050 and not a dime more. The $50 is me being generous to give you a second chance to do things right. I immediately informed him that I still have all the equipment, and in fact, it would only take maybe 20 minutes to complete the job. However, I had a different idea in terms of the price. The new price was $15,000 to be paid in cash. He immediately starts yelling and hollering. I keep talking and inform him he has 2 weeks to decide if being able to get paid by his clients was worth it. If not, the equipment was going back and that would be that. No hard feelings, I hung up. About 2 days later, I got a call from Tony informing me he agreed to the new arrangement and to please set it up and install it ASAP. I tell him I can go Friday, but I would need to be paid $15,000 cash before I even unload a single bolt from my vehicle. He agreed. I could hear a lady talking and tell him he needs to get this resolved because they have not had revenue in nearly 2 weeks. This was on Wednesday. On Thursday, I got a call from his daughter, who is apparently the accountant and the lady who was telling him to resolve it. She is cutting a check and needs to know my name. I informed her that I would not be accepting checks and I had told Tony specifically it would be in cash. She says okay and tells me if the amount of $12,000 was correct. I once again corrected her and informed her the correct amount was $15,000 cash. She said in a satirical tone, "Of course it's $15,000. I will go make the withdrawal and have the money ready tomorrow." Sure enough, Friday morning, true to her words, she and Tony were there with $15,000 cash. I counted it in front of her and Tony. She makes a comment saying that I was a lifesaver because they could not go back to the service they used before to get paid and they urgently needed to get some POs sent out. I placed the cash in my vehicle, locked the glove box, and unloaded the equipment. True to my word, it took me 20 minutes to place the server, firewall, and UPS inside the rack mount, connect the cables, power on the server, and ask them to test it out when they got a chance. If anything was wrong, I said not to contact me and to have a good day. I actually had tested it out already before I left their server room, as despite my pettiness at times, I am still a professional. I think one of the worst things in the world is a scammer, and these days it seems like they're everywhere. So I'm glad OP went above and beyond with getting his revenge on this guy. Stress aside, I've got to say, OP walked out with all of this with a pretty good deal in the end, and the scammer learned a lesson. I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and I'll see you in the next video.